Hi everyone. Thanks, Cooper. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the new roof I just built for my chicken coop, and it's made from entirely free pallet wood shingles. Okay, so before we begin, two quick caveats. If there is something that you feel like I didn't answer in this video, be sure to check out my other shingle related videos. I have a lot of pallet wood related videos. So, you know, if they're like, well, yeah, but how do I do this, that, or the other thing? Make sure you've watched those other videos. I probably talked about it. The other thing is, for all of you professional roofers and builders out there, we know. We know that a pallet wood roof is not going to be superior or even equal to a professionally installed many $1,000 roof. We know.
Because you've heard what I've come to say.
You have said enough.
Here we go, making shingles. Now, I've made a lot of videos about the specifics about how to approach that and as well as how to figure out how many shingles and courses you have that you want to use. I will say that a roof benefits from more overlap between the shingles. Ideally, a 50% overlap. You know, if it's a 16-inch shingle, then an 8-inch overlap is ideal. So do your best, figure out the number of shingles and courses that will work for your roof, but that's the basic idea. Now, something that I decided to do this time around with this roof is I decided to pre-treat the shingles with boiled linseed oil. And the way that I did that, I was at a local big box home improvement store, and they were practically giving away these, how many gallons? 24-gallon totes. And the reason specifically I liked this tote is because the bottom is flat. And that's actually kind of unusual. A lot of times they have all kinds of ridges and bumps, and it makes it difficult to lay a shingle flat down so that you can immerse it in linseed oil. And I like to use boiled linseed oil. It dries faster. Now, the other thing that I did was, as I would, wearing gloves, I would immerse the shingle in the boiled linseed oil, and then I would stand them up on the side. And so essentially it was good if the tote was a little bit tilted, because then it would all want to run to kind of one side of the tote. And then that way, the immersed shingles that were now kind of draining could sit on one side of the tote, and I would stack them up until it was too tight to be immersing and immersing and draining the shingles. Then I would start taking them out, and I would start laying them out on the pallet. Now, I did this over the course of about 2 days. I figured out roughly how many shingles I would need. I cut all of those in advance. And then after I had the guesstimate of how many shingles I would need, I went to took the step of starting to get them all pre-treated. And then I let them dry on the pallet for a day or two, and then we were ready to install them on the roof. Okay, so when it comes to making this roof successful, the critical piece of the puzzle to begin with is make sure you have a properly installed ice and water shield on the roof. I don't have one here in this because it's kind of expensive, and so I didn't want to use any for the demonstration. But what that does is self-healing is when a nail goes through it, it's sort of like tar paper, sticky tar paper. And when the nail goes through, it seals up the hole so that water can't leak through the penetration into the roof. Okay, so that needs to be installed correctly, and you need to have correctly installed drip edge on the top and bottom and rake edge on the sides. And that also needs to be installed correctly compared to the ice and water shield. They all have their place on that ice and water shield. Okay, so once that's done correctly, then the next step, or the beginning step, is furring. Now, I save just about every material that I have, and I had some leftover composite decking, plastic decking, and I ripped those boards into 1-inch strips. Now, for a relatively smallish roof, which is likely what you would be using pallet wood shingles on, you're not going to need a lot of composite decking. And so maybe a board or two ripped into 1-inch strips is going to be all you need, because it is expensive, but it also never rots. And so I recommend it. Now, if you don't want to go that route, you could also go with something like ground contact pressure treated lumber ripped into 1-inch strips. That'll work okay, but it won't last anywhere as long as composite decking. Okay, so the next thing I did was using a table saw, I cut weep holes about every 3 or 4 inches on these furring strips. Okay, so then the furring strip, and another thing I also did was I also cut 3-inch strips of ice and water shield that I put down additionally under each furring strip, because not only does it get a lot of nails at the furring strip points, but also screws to hold them down securely. Okay, so the furring strip goes down and it hangs off the sides by 1 inch. So make sure as you're going, you don't forget. There's a couple times where I would line it up with the edge and be like, shoot. And then I'd unscrew it and slide it 1 inch off the edge. And that will come in later. And a couple quick points about the actual shingle installation itself. Make sure that you're staggering the shingles in the courses so that they don't line up. You know, one shingle to the next course isn't lined up with the seam edge of the next course. So, you know, starting the course out with an extra wide or extra thin board will throw the course off compared to the course below it or above it. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is that you can use different thickness shingles on the roof. You just can't use them in the same course. So make sure you separate your boards by thickness. A lot of times that happens when you're, you know, ripping up a bunch of pallets. You'll get some that are thick and some that are a little thinner. That's okay. Collect them together into the various thicknesses, and that will be a course to itself based on the thickness of those boards. All right, so something to keep in mind, because you are using a furring strip, you can use different thickness furring strip. I use 1 inch, you could use a different one. You could use a 1/2 inch, whatever. That said, make sure your nails are long enough to get full penetration all the way through the shingle, the furring strip, and into all the way through the cladding. So in this instance, I was using 2.5 inch nails. A couple things that I want to point out about the actual installation of the shingles and the furring strips is you want to have the first furring strip double width, or thickness, I should say. And so in this instance, that means it would be about a 2-inch furring strip. At least more than the actual 1 inch or whatever thickness you choose. And that seems to set up the shingles for a little better overlap. And so then remember, I mentioned that you need to make sure it overhangs by 1 inch, and the shingles need to get installed all the way to the edge of that overhang of 1 inch. And the reason is, once this is all complete and you've done the whole roof, then you need to just put a little skirt on the sides of your roof so that if you get a really strong storm that's blowing rain from the side, it can't blow in. And so then what that does is it creates a nice little cover for the rain to not get in, but for good air circulation to pass over each lane of the furring strips. And some final notes. This is basically more about the principles than it is the specifics, because different climates and different kind of roof angles and pitches could change some of the details of how I did mine. But the basic idea is to ensure that we get good air movement underneath the shingles, as well as making sure that they're secure and hold down tight if it's windy. So, you're gonna need to apply your localness, needs to your roof design. But it's, like I said, it's the principles. If you find, thanks Cooper. If you find that they're too expensive for your taste to buy, go ahead and use pressure treated lumber. But that being said, you're gonna get a lot more mileage, but it won't take very many of them. So here's a side note. On a previous video, I think it was the one on pavers, I had a bunch of bloopers about this guy, and people kept commenting, well, why don't you just leave it in? Yeah. And for literally the 10 people that made it to the end of this video, this is such a niche video, there's only a few people that need to put a pallet wood, shingle roof on their chicken coop or shed or whatever. If you made it this far, would you consider doing the YouTube stuff, the liking, the subscribing, especially the commenting? It really helps out the channel, as well as maybe think about supporting the channel in other ways to ensure that I can keep making videos that are useful to you. And as always, if you like this video, well, you might like these.